Hello, my name is Gus Livermore, and today I will be doing my presentation on corporate crime and why companies can get away with crimes regularly. What is corporate crime? Corporate crime is crime committed within the boundaries of someone's legal occupation. These kinds of crimes are committed for the gain of a company as opposed to white-collar crime, where the crime is committed for personal financial gain. Examples of common corporate crimes could include companies ignoring environmental regulations, certain manufacturers ignoring safety concerns, food companies not recalling unsafe foods, failing to report losses or gains to the SEC. What is a societal response to corporate crime? In many cases, the offense of corporate crime is given a very mild punishment, and this is due to the fact that these corporations that are committing the crimes usually have large lobbyists for the politicians, and in turn the courts that end up prosecuting them. While overall society sees the act of corporate crime as something that is usually despicable and wrong, the government tends to see it in a different light. This is due to the fact that many of the corporations that are tried for these crimes are large economic powerhouses that are crucial to the U.S. economy. What this means is that there is a large interest from the Department of Justice in keeping Fortune 500 companies out of the courtroom. This is the most difficult thing about trying to prosecute certain companies, the fact that they are almost too important to go under because the economy will feel the after effects. Another response from society can be seen in the data that fewer Americans were participating in the stock market in 2020 than in 2000. The percentage of Americans that own stocks is down because of corporate crime, and the average Americans do not seem to trust corporations. How did these companies avoid trial? There are many cases today, and in the recent past where a company will settle in the recent past where a company will settle the case outside of the law. This is called a deferred prosecution agreement, or a DPA. This means that by doing this, companies are able to avoid actual prosecution and in turn avoid having to make changes to how they do things, such as changing management or their CEO or just general business practices. What most DPAs end up doing is making companies pay either retribution or just a fine to the government. There have been some notorious DPAs in the recent past exceeding billions of dollars. Some of these include Airbus, a company specializing in aerospace vehicles, paid a $3.9 billion fine in 2020 for bribing foreign authorities. Western Union had to pay $586 million for wire fraud. And General Motors had to pay about $900 million for safety violations that were long known about in their cars. What did these companies all have in common? They were all able to successfully avoid trial, and at the end of the day, even with their large fines, they still made a substantial amount of profit. What does this mean for us? Overall, what this means is that there are very little incentive for companies to actually follow the law, given all of the options they have to avoid prosecution. If these companies know that they can still turn profits, they are unlikely to change their behavior.
Meet Tony Sleaze. He recently
Here's a good video that I thought was actually quite funny that illustrates kind of the mentality that these corporations have and how they kind of view crimes that they commit themselves.
decided to live his life as a corporation.
Well, in certain countries, the law considers corporations to be people. So I thought, why can't I become a corporation? I mean, I already don't give a f*** about anyone.
As a corporation, Tony has devised complex techniques to maximize his profit margins.
I don't pay for things.
It's a shop, my friend.
I'll pay for some of it. I'm not paying the tax. Look, all my spare change tied up in Luxembourg, all right? Do you accept strip club loyalty cards?
You can leave.
People say us corporations don't care about the planet, but I'm always campaigning on environmental issues.
Climate change is a lie! It's a lie made up by polar bears to make us feel sorry for them. Al Gore's an idiot. Polar bears are scum.
If you actually look at
Extreme melt at the North and South Pole.
One law he cannot ignore is his obligation to maximise returns for his shareholders by any means necessary.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. It's free, innit? So just pour it on that swan.
Come on.
Do you speak English? This here, and they're just like.
Relationships are key for a corporation. So obviously, I'm deeply concerned about the consumer's view of me.
Pick it up. And this.
Can't go out. Can't leave my house.
How about that? No. Please, no, not my arm.
If you do not pay tax, that means you're a thief.
Climate change is a lie.
It's not nice.
You're the joke, you're the hippie.
Oh, that's good. Very environmentally friendly. Yeah, there you have one.
I thought that was a very good video at just kind of illustrating the, I don't know if it's irony, but just kind of the way that corporations operate, and to see it be kind of the mentality of these corporations put into the body of one person, and kind of seeing one person be the corporation, I think is it really highlights just how wrong the processes and kind of how they think are, and just how they know they're going to get away with stuff. Moving on, I have some examples of popular scandals and corporate crimes. So the first is the Enron scandal. This one took place, I believe, in the early 2000s. They were withholding documents, destroying other financial documents to hide very large sums of debt. They didn't report losses on investments they'd made, and $74 billion in shareholder money was lost. New laws were passed as a result of this, one of them being the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, increased the severity of penalties for future corporations committing these same crimes by making CFOs and CEOs personally responsible for income statements and balance statements. Next is the Madoff scandal. I believe there's actually a new movie on Netflix about him. He defrauded investors around the world for decades until his arrest in December 2008. He lost his investors over $85 billion, was sentenced to 150 years in prison, and was ordered to pay $170 billion in restitution. Along with this, I believe he also funneled $65 billion for himself, and was, got away with for quite a long time with billions and billions of dollars, living a very lavish lifestyle. Now we have the Wells Fargo scandal. Over the course of the 2000s, millions of savings and checkings accounts were set up without the knowledge of customers. This led to unexpected fees and payments that had to be made without the consent of the account holders, and ended with a total fine of $2.7 billion for Wells Fargo. The Ford Pinto scandal, which I think is a very interesting one. In the early 1970s, Ford released a new small sedan called the Pinto. Due to poor engineering and lack of effort, the car's gas tank was very susceptible to explosions. What this led to was over 25 deaths related to the issue. Instead of fixing the issue, what Ford ended up doing, as opposed to recalling the car, was make $200,000 payouts to the families that had lost a loved one or loved ones. What this did was make it so that Ford was still able to turn massive profits with the Pinto, being able to ignore regulations and laws. So essentially, they took the hit for $200,000 approximately 25 times. And even with that, they made much more money than they would have if they had recalled all of them and actually fixed the issue and kept people safe. Now we're moving on to sentencing and punishment. As we discussed earlier, in most cases, it's usually a DPA, and the main punishment for a company is a fine. One of the big arguments about this is that even though they have to pay a large fine, it does not offset the company's revenue, as we just talked about with the Ford Pinto. Essentially, it seems very pointless that the company is being punished this way. And that's just, when you really think about it, like looking at the Ford Pinto, it's almost pointless to even pay these fines because they're just going to make more money than if they followed the rules. And here's what we're doing. At the end of the day, there's very little that is done for the people when corporations violate the law. There are many different protections that companies have in place to protect them from prosecution in the law, and I hope that in the future we can finally start holding these companies more accountable for what they do and the people they hurt. One of the most recent steps that we've taken to help with this, as we discussed earlier, is the passing of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which now finally holds the CEOs, CFOs, and higher-ups directly responsible for the actions of their companies, thus increasing the accountability that companies need to have. Thank you for listening to my presentation on corporate crime. And